Welcome back, everyone, to the Growth Playbook with Alan Beaulieu and myself, Kim Clark. In this week's episode, we are going to dive into the business application side of last week's episode. So if you missed it, I encourage you to visit our YouTube channel or go to our Spotify to check it out first. So that way you can be all caught up when we're diving through these different questions. It's from all the great insight Dad shared with us last week. This week is all the questions that came up in my mind as he was going through all the different facets of the big, beautiful bill. So I'm looking forward to being able to ask you those questions that were top of mind last week and seeing where the conversation goes today. So, hi, Dad.
Hi there, dear daughter. How are you?
I'm good.
Good. I'm hoping that also, besides your questions, people who participate, listen, whatever the right word is, send in some too, because I'll be happy to answer those if I can.
Yes.
And we can talk about them, or I can just answer them privately if people would prefer just a private answer.
I love that. So reach out on LinkedIn, post comments, YouTube, Spotify, any of those areas will catch us.
Yes, excellent. All right, so what's on your mind?
All right. So the first question makes sense. It starts at the beginning of last week's episode when you were talking about tips. And so if you don't mind, just a quick 1 to 3 sentence recap of the changes to tips, and then I'll dive into my question.
Sure, it's pretty simple. If the first $25,000 in tips are deductible from your income earnings for the year. So that just saves you money. If you pay taxes at all, you're saving some money. So whatever your tax rate is, all of a sudden that money's in your pocket, or you're not writing the check to the IRS anyways. And if you most likely you're going to get a refund because your withholdings are probably not going to change. So it's a real benefit to a lot of working folks.
Excellent, thank you. So my question was, our conversation last week was focused mainly on the restaurant sector and the benefits that that would have to somebody, say, as a waitress or a waiter, and so on. But I was thinking through. There's like your hairdressers; those are predominantly tip based. I'm thinking of my closest friend. Her tips make all the biggest difference in the world, and so when I started thinking of additional areas where tips really are a huge part of your annual salary and you're very dependent on those, it grew a lot bigger in my mind, I guess, as you were going through it. And so that was brought the question to me, how could a business leader use this new tips benefit, and I'm using air quotes because I'm lacking a better way to word it, as a business strategy for retaining employees, attracting new employees, how could that be used in a communication strategy as a benefit to being in their industry when perhaps previously it was not as ideal?
Yeah, that's a really good observation, by the way, about hairdressers and Uber drivers and all the rest of that. And thank you for bringing that up. And I think if you want to, lure is not really, if you want to enhance the benefit of becoming a hairdresser, for instance, you can, just say, yeah, you're working in the grocery store, you're more, and you're not just bagging. I don't want to say just bagging. That's wrong, Alan. You're working, but it's a job and it's something you've been doing, and it's $40,000 a year or $45,000 a year. You go to school, become a hairdresser, and all of a sudden you're a hairdresser and you're able to make this amount of money. And guess what? 25,000 of that is tax free, so that adds this much more. So I think it's a two-step. It's like you want to attract people up the economic ladder into an area that they find attractive, and show them that there's, besides the raise you're getting, you're paying less taxes on, or you're going to save money on taxes. And there's different ways of putting it. You may not actually pay less because you're getting a raise, but the hourly rate you can break down into this much better an hourly rate. There's different ways to do it. For people in the industry, it doesn't really work for retention, because if you're a jerk working for, if you're working for a jerk and you go work for somebody else, the benefit goes with you. So it doesn't help keep anybody. It just helps people leaving who are thinking of leaving the beautician or the tip related job. And it may make it harder for them to do so.
I
My
wonder if
first,
it could be, oops, sorry.
no,
I
no, you
thought
go
you were
ahead.
pausing on that thought. My thought also went to being used as a cultural thing to be celebrated, right? Something that could be just announced in an internal newsletter or flyer. Guess what, team? This is coming out on such and such a month date, whatever the case may be, as a morale booster, or just another great thing for working here and being in the industry that you're in. Or my mind went to, like you were saying, listening as a benefit, updating careers pages so that we can say now tax benefits and stuff like that, specific to this type of a role. So just some more very tactical, less strategic, but very tactical steps could be taken with this coming out.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and good thinking. You do that much better than I do. But I mean, that is certainly true. Um, and I think the field you brought up is a good example of where it can really make a difference in people's lives, because they are paying taxes. So it's not, you're not at a level where the tax deduction doesn't mean anything, or the deduction in income doesn't mean anything. It's a real thing.
Yeah.
And so that's a good thing. By the way, that's what Ellie at this point in her life thinks she wants to do.
Oh, I love that. I'll let Brittany know. Maybe we'll schedule a girls' day.
Yeah, that's it.
She'd love that. All right, so then on to my next question. Very similar thought process. You were talking about overtime and the benefits that are being rolled out in the big beautiful bill for overtime. Maybe again, just a quick 1 to 3 recap of what that was for our audience in case somebody hadn't tuned in last week, and then I can dive into my question.
Sure. The first $12,500 of overtime earnings within income parameters is now going to become a deduction on your tax return. So you will not pay taxes on that first $12,500, which if you're a working person, that's a big deal. Because one of the disincentives to overtime was like, well, I'm just going to pay more in taxes, so it really takes away a lot of the, yeah, get some overtime. So at least it
I,
used to for me.
me as well. So I was thinking when you had mentioned that, I don't recall if you mentioned a very specific industry, but I wrote down, I have my questions in front of me from our last episode. Um, Construction. The construction industry is well known for employees working overtime, or landscapers, well known for working overtime. These more laborman type jobs. I was trying to, my question to you is, what other markets do you think of when you think of it's normal for them to work this type of overtime?
Manufacturing, distribution, truck driving. Well, there's certain hour limitations in truck driving, so maybe I'll dial that one back. But a lot of the trades, HVAC, electricians, plumbers, there's a wide range where people on an hourly basis get paid on an hourly basis and work overtime because often there's a shortage of help. Um, so I think this will be fairly wide ranging and make people smile.
And that smile is what then brought me to my next question, where, and I don't have an immediate game plan in mind, but I'm curious that what pops into your head when I say this, some sort of internal communication strategy to let people know that this is now available, that then may spur more people willing to put in said overtime. As you mentioned before, it wasn't as incentivized to want to do it if I'm just going to get taxed more. So this could be some sort of internal communication rollout that might help with flipping that coin.
Yeah, I think you're right. If a company's big enough to have an HR department or person, or maybe it's the owner, just gets people together and said, just so you, in case you missed it, this is what this means. And it doesn't save the company any money, but it saves the individual. And I just wanted to make sure that you knew this so you could take maximum benefit of it, because most of the folks probably aren't using the CPA for their return. So just make sure that when you use H&R Block or whatever, TurboTax or whatever, that you're aware that you're not going to be paying as much taxes on that money than you did last year, as much as you did last year. So that should bring smiles and happiness and joy for the day. it'll last
And
a
also
day.
an appreciation that the boss would take the time to share that to make sure that they reap that benefit. I think that would help build a
Oh yeah.
stronger, it'd be good for the culture in general. Wow, the boss or the HR actually thought of us and is sharing, making sure we're aware. I feel like it's a good, like, I don't know if this is the right wording for it, but like a good social responsibility type example that they could use in building their culture.
Well, see, that you're absolutely right. That you have a heart. I'm the first living heart donor.
And it grew three sizes today. All right, Dad. So we just wrapped up talking about the overtime. You had then moved into a tax deduction for your property taxes, as I recall, you were talking about last week. Maybe just a quick recap on that part of the bill, and then I
Yeah.
can dive into the question that I had or the thought that it had brought to mind.
Yeah, it's a really big part of it. It's SALT, SALT, state and local taxes. So it's property taxes, state income taxes that you pay, state sales taxes that you pay. So people in California who have high taxes, it can be up to a $40,000 that they can take off their adjusted gross income. So it obviously reduces their tax base. And it's something that works well for people. 10,000 is kind of thin, so bringing it up obviously benefits upper middle class and higher income folks because the rest don't usually have $10,000 worth of income taxes or property taxes. But for those that do have property or live in income tax states, it's a big deal. And it's temporary. It's only through 2028. Um, so it's a nice help for a while, which has the benefit of benefiting the economy, benefit of benefiting, because uh, some of that will go into savings, all right? That's not paid out in taxes, but savings is money available for banks to lend out. And also, people that don't have to pay as much taxes will spend money. So whatever they spend it on, it's part of the economic engine. So it's not a bad thing, except for that one thing we talked about, which is this all adds to the deficit. But in the short term, it does have
That
its,
little thing.
yeah, that little thing, that little ticking thing in the background. Ignore that ticking. It's really just a watch. But overall, in the short term, if you want to create some excitement, that's a good way to do it.
All right, so the question, so I believe you were speaking specifically, you used the example of New Hampshire and how our property taxes are higher. And being a resident of New Hampshire and having friends in the real estate industry, it just made me want to ask you the question, do you see any benefit for some form of a business strategy that could be used to capitalize on these next few years where this is now available and implemented? Is there any benefit to the real estate market from this addition?
I don't know. I don't know enough about selling real estate to know how you might position that. It certainly helps with recruiting people into New Hampshire because SALT makes it more affordable for the next 4 years when you can deduct more. I suppose if I was in the real estate business, I'd find a way to bring it up in the conversation that, the property taxes here are 12,000. When you see them go, you go, but relax, it's all tax deductible now. So that's all people want to hear, right? Now it's tax or 14,000, whatever it happens to be, have the realtor bring it up and go, that's not as bad as it sounds. Chances are if people are coming to New Hampshire, they already know why they want to live in New Hampshire. So it might be just another added piece. I'm not sure too many people say, well, it's between here and Vermont. I mean, nobody wants to move to Vermont. So it's like,
I agree with that. I wasn't thinking it'd be like a silver bullet that could be used to really generate a lot of activity, but I think to what you had just said, it's just another added value statement that
yes.
somebody can have in a conversation.
Yeah. And it helps them leave the house feeling good about,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Okay, perfect. So then just looking at my notes from our last episode, we talked about the auto industry, and unfortunately, I did not take fabulous notes. All it says is deduct auto loan biz strategy. Do you mind refreshing my brain on what
Yeah.
you had talked about on that?
new automobile loans, and I mentioned that I wasn't sure whether it was new autos or new automobile loans. You can deduct now, it's temporary also, for the next 4 or 5 years, um, 4 years, I think, up to $10,000 in interest paid. Now, in the old days, when you were young, we used to be able to do that, and we could deduct interest on our credit cards and on our car loans and on everything. That all got done away with a long time ago. This brings back an important piece of it, which helps not only consumers. Consumers now can look at that 8% and go, well, at least I get to write it off my taxes. And again, that's just a mind thing, but it is a tangible benefit. It helps reduce the cost, and it helps boost the automobile industry as more consumers are saying, oh, okay. As it boosts the automobile industry, it helps an untold amount of people. It's an important part of GDP. That's not just manufacturers. It's not just GM and Ford. It's people that supply them, and people that supply, there's tier one, tier two, tier three suppliers. Then there's the people who truck it all over the place. It's a benefit to a large group of people. All it does is cost us money in the future.
That's it. Not for your generation to have to worry about.
That's correct.
Noted. So, in thinking on that, and these are just 3-second thoughts, I just can't help but feel, is there some sort of messaging that these auto dealers might want to adopt? I mean, they're always doing these random commercials and this and that. I'm just wondering if there's some sort of opportunity here to help drive some more of that interest as an incentive, or is that just something a salesman, like an Oscar or something, when I walk in, reminds you of during the negotiation? I'm just curious your thought on what you said. It was it was an existing thing when I was a kid. Did you like, do you see a difference between then and now in terms of activity?
Yeah, the whole world's a different place from when you were a kid. For one thing, the last dinosaur died. That changed everything.
Fair enough.
But if I was a dealership, I would be tempted to have a poster on the windows that says, interest is now tax deductible up to $10,000. I mean, that's just that statement. The dollar amount's going to get people's attention. And when you go through the finance office where they try to sell you everything under the sun, they can also make sure you understand that, hey, get excited. This is great timing, Kim, because, now that interest is deductible. So sure, it's going to cost $9,000 in interest, but you get to take a deduction. And, so it's a feel good, I'm making the right decision. So the sign on the door gets them in, maybe some TV advertising, if people still listen to radio advertising, that kind of stuff. That can help. I would do it.
Okay. Yeah, that was kind of my thought too. I'm just trying to think of it like the business application of these different things versus, hey, that's great, as the leaders of these companies and these different industries. Which actually brought me to one of my questions that was not necessarily specific to the individual points, but when, so you've listed some of these things lasting until 2028. Is this something that's implemented as in right now, or is there a scheduled launch for these things? Okay, so these are things that business leaders should be working on, a communication strategy of some kind right now to really capitalize over the next few years.
Yeah, my understanding is, and again, everybody should check with their own tax accountant, right? Because I'm an economist, not a tax accountant. But my understanding is these changes will impact your tax return for 2025, that you will
Okay.
be filing in early 2026. That's my
Okay.
understanding. But again, check with your local tax advisor.
Awesome. Okay, perfect. So let's see, moving on to the next one. So you mentioned the building of the wall and all the investment that's going on there, investment and varying into defense and such. And so what just popped into my mind was geo-targeting in marketing strategy, where if you know there's going to be an influx of workers or activity, that really opens up some doors for very specific regionalized marketing campaigns, which is something you and I have talked about over the years, where we shy away from that. We have always focused more on a national scale, but it seems to me with some of this very pocket focused activity going on, there could be some opportunities for some more targeted regional advertising.
Yeah, absolutely, because there's going to be regionally increased activity. It's a lot like the fab plants, the semiconductor plants that are being built. I mean, real boon to I think it's Indianapolis, and outside certainly Columbus and outside Phoenix. And I mean, the local activity there was like because of all the money and people coming in and all the rest of that. And this will be the same thing, where the detention centers are being built, where the people that are building the wall have to live somewhere. By the way, I thought of something since last week that made me chuckle, is that it's going to take a lot of labor, and 13% of the construction labor force are made up by illegal immigrants. So they may not show up for
Competing
work.
interests.
Yeah, yeah, they may not show up. Could slow down production. Just saying.
No, it's an interesting point. It made me laugh. Um, I was reading something, I'm just looking at my notes again, reading somewhere some investment in water and port infrastructures and upgrades and such as part of this bill. Or in like military bases and such. So when I was just doing some random Googles, other targeted areas that it gave me were places like Hawaii, Alaska. I didn't know because obviously you talked about the wall, so I thought more about like Arizona and that area. But are are there components of this bill where potentially a Hawaii or Alaska might also see increased activity?
Yes, I saw a little of that too, but I didn't do a deep dive in through there. I didn't get into that level. But certainly that's possible. One of the things that we're going to be talking about when we talk about the dollar is how Hawaii can specifically benefit from a weaker dollar. So we'll talk about that next week.
Oh,
Uh,
that's fascinating.
yeah, lots for us to fathom as we go forward. Uh, but I don't know any specifics of what we've talked about or what I researched that would call out those two. The one thing I did read was on cost sharing of state SNAP, but I didn't bother reading all the details because it sounded very accounting and I got bored.
You
Yeah,
with
yeah,
accounting got bored?
I did.
All right, well, if nothing else, and I do have a couple more questions, so our audience will still get some more examples and just maybe just start having some creative energy and creative thought coming from, well, how can this bill benefit me? It seems like maybe the undertone of all of this is do your homework, go through the bill, and maybe even have a think tank, group think type session on how can you capitalize on these changes to maximize opportunities for your business successfully.
Oh yeah, absolutely. If there's an increased income flow to this demographic, is that my market or is that a market I want to pursue? That's exactly the type of thing that should be going on um, in a positive way. you know. And if there's a, we did talk about it earlier about the tips and stuff. If there's a way to use that as an advantage, I think I'm not positive, but I think it's pretty safe to say that Uber and Lyft want to attract more drivers than they currently have, but I could be way off on that. I don't have a fact. Just in talking with Uber drivers, it seems like there's always a turnover and always a need. Uh, the fact that these tips are now deductible up to a certain amount, first 25,000, it's like that's a great hiring incentive. So they should be all over that. If they don't know this and are not telling people this, they're really shooting themselves in the foot for no reason. And there are lots of companies that you talked about it before, so I guess I'm reiterating, that need to talk this up. And maybe corporate needs to pass it down to a franchisee who may not know anything about this. I'm thinking of
Yeah,
Great Clips. The
I
local
was
clips.
too.
Oh, were you?
I was too.
Yeah, yeah. Just corporate needs to pass the word along, and that can really have an impact on people's attitudes and the ability to attract.
Agreed. And when you're mentioning specific demographics, some of the other things that I was looking into when you had mentioned, what was it, Medicaid? No, there was some other benefit to, where are my notes? Um,
I think in front of you.
yeah, the specific ones that I'm looking for. There was, let's see, permanent individual and small business tax cuts. I'm trying to think what part of what you went through was the section where it was specifically discussing um like the senior population receiving benefits from
Yeah, they get to
bill.
take a deduction of $6,000 on their tax return, which makes part of their income tax-free. And that's to help seniors, which I applauded and thought it was a very good thing to do. High income people on Social Security don't get that benefit, but the vast majority will, which is obviously a very good thing. Um, Another one that we did not talk about, Kim, because it doesn't apply to everybody, and maybe not a large part of the listening audience, but to some, is that the state tax ceiling, how much you can pass on the next generation, is going to remain high. It's not going to go back down. And I mean, I think, and I'm going off memory, so it could be faulty, but I'm going to use what I have in my memory. It's that $15.5 million can go tax-free to your, to whoever's behind you, your kids or nieces and nephews, whoever. Um, and without this, it would revert to like 11 million. So for most people, that's a rich person's problem. But for a large part of maybe, hopefully a large part of people listening in, or people who own businesses that has a lot of value, because that's part of the estate process, if they want to keep it in the family, that's a big deal. And it saves a lot in taxes, because estate taxes are not in every country, and estate taxes are like a real pain in the neck when somebody passes away. Uh, Frank would get everything you have, no problem whatsoever. But after that, if you go before Frank, but then when Frank would pass away, that's when it gets to be real problematic.
Hmm,
So it's
got
it's
it.
I read it as a good thing, you know. And if somebody has an estate of $100 million, they're going to pay a boatload in estate taxes no matter what. So
Now, going back to the 6,000 for the seniors, one of the thoughts that I had off the cuff was, would they be inclined to repurpose that money elsewhere? So could businesses, say, in travel and leisure, start targeting the senior population with advantageous discounts or such on trip packages or something, and they might be more inclined to want to take that trip because now they do have that savings on the other end. Again, just trying to think through different industries and how they might be able to get
sure.
some extra business out of it.
Yeah, that's certainly a way to do it. And it might be in selling them something that they wouldn't automatically be. And travel is very important to seniors. So, I mean, I like that idea a lot. I was calling somebody the other day. They said, if you're over 65, push one. So I pushed one, and they're trying to sell me on LifeLock at a discounted price. I'm going, gee, that one hurt. But you just got to push the button. They'll find you.
Would have pushed two had I known.
So, yes. So I called back and pushed two. So I couldn't get out of it. It was one deal after
They
another. It's
trapped
like,
you.
yeah, they captured me. But, if somebody knows that they're getting more money and somebody has to explain it to them, or they're astute enough to know that they're saving in taxes now because of this bill, they might be more inclined to buy LifeLock or buy an extra insurance plan. So an insurance agent that's versed on this can say, well, now that you're getting this tax break, it makes it easier to afford the supplemental plan. And here's the benefit of that. I mean, so service businesses as well as product dealers can think of ways to educate and help the senior population that way.
I love it. Love it. Um, let's see. So looking at, oh, so the detention center construction, is that something that's going to be underway relatively quickly as well, or is that a staged plan, do you know, over X amount of years?
All construction is staged, and they can't possibly build them all at once. The permitting process, even if the feds can expedite it, takes a while. And then you've been around construction, uh, the groundwork, earthwork, and then the foundations, and then, the pilings and everything else. It just all takes time. It seems like you're in the ground forever before we even begin to see a building. So this takes years. So the money, that 45 billion, is spent out over years. Uh, In some cases, that's better. It's a steady stream. And it begins with the earthwork guys and ends with the electricians and HVAC guys and all the rest of that. So it's spread over different industries over a period of time, giving a more sustained benefit to an area outside Columbus, whatever it happens to be. I
Okay.
think downtown New York would work.
Downtown New York. Just put a wall around that.
I think there was a movie about that once, wasn't there?
I don't know, but if not, there should be.
Pretty sure there was. Goldie
My
Hawn's
final
husband.
question. Oops, sorry. Go ahead.
Goldie Hawn's husband starred in that movie. I can't remember his name, but
I don't know.
that's okay. It's irrelevant to what we're talking about.
My final question that I had was when you were very accurately pointing out that there are immediate benefits to varying segments, but this is just simply making the debt situation worse. And we've talked about that and how a big of a risk that is for our country. So I kept bringing back the thought when you shared your 1% plan. Um, and could something like the 1% plan be implemented alongside this big, beautiful bill? So that way you're still shifting things over here, but you're still mandating reductions by the 1% in other areas of the federal government.
Yeah, you certainly could. And if you did both, it would take a lot of, if you did the 1% solution, it would certainly take a lot of the pain. Some of the pain, I won't say a lot, take some of the pain out. And if you got real serious about it year after year, it would certainly take away, there'd be less risk in the decade to come about the depth and duration if the U.S. economy doesn't keep it from imploding on itself.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I appreciate you entertaining all of my follow-up questions to last week's episode. I found it, as I mentioned, very insightful, and just my little brain cranking through saying, well, how can businesses use this? How can businesses use this to generate more revenue? So I appreciate the exercise going through and thinking through those different ways together.
No, you're welcome. And next week we talk about the dollar.
It's either the dollar or the tariffs, the Trump
Oh, yes.
tariffs.
You decide. I'll be here either way.
All right, and audience, you wait to find out which one it will be.
All right. And I hope we get some good questions coming in. Happy to answer them and do our best to help people along.
Exactly. And don't forget, if you subscribe to either the Spotify or the YouTube channel, you'll get automatic notifications when the next one comes out, and you will be one of the first to know if we talked about the Trump tariffs or the US dollar. So until next time, thanks,
Thank you
Dad. See
all.
you later.
Bye.